Welcome to Drive the Daf. Clear, structured explanation of the daily Daf in 20 minutes. You can even follow in the car.
Maseches Yoma Daf Yud Tes begins immediately following a Mishnah which described the Kohen Gadol's activities in the moments just preceding Yom Kippur and on the night of Yom Kippur, as he prepared to stay awake, and as he tried to stay awake, and as the Chachamim tried to keep him awake for the entire Yom Kippur night in order that he not come to Tumah. The Gemara will describe the layout of the Beis HaMikdash and how these activities worked. The Gemara will then move on to describe what else happened on Yom Kippur night. The Gemara will bring another Mishnah, which we shall see at the end of the daf, which continues describing how they tried keeping him awake. Along the way, there will be a sidestep to discuss a bit of Hilchos Kriya Shema. So first of all, the Gemara notes that the Mishnah had said that the Kohen Gadol needs to go to the base of Tinnis, where they prepared Ketores, in order to learn some part of the Avodah. The Gemara says, what did he learn? He needed to do how to do the Melo Chafnav. That is, he has to hold his cupped hands, he has to hold two handfuls of the Ketores, and he has to transfer that into the container which he's also holding. Now, he can't hold it and hold two cupped handfuls at the same time, so it's a difficult avodah to manage that transfer, and that's how he had to have special training in how to do that. He also wasn't allowed to drop a grain of it. So that was hard. That was the hardest avodah that was in the Beis HaMikdash, and that's what he needed to train for. Now the Gemara describes the layout. It says the Gemara, there were two lishkos that were specific to the Kohen Gadol. One was called the Lishkas Parhedrin, and that was where he slept during the 7 days he was quarantined in the Beis HaMikdash before Yom Kippur. And the other was called Lishkas Beis Tinnis, that was where he learned this avodah of the Ketores. Now, one of these was in the northern part, against the northern wall of the Azara. One was in the southern wall of the Azara, and the Gemara now quotes a couple of Mishnayos which describe the layout. The first one says that there were 6 Lishkas in the Azara. There were 3 in the north and 3 in the south. The 3 in the south were called the Lishkas HaMelach, the salt office, the Lishkas HaParva, and Lishkas HaMedichin. So the Gemara says, what were they all for? Lishkas HaMelach, that was where they put salt on the karbanos meats which were on the way to the Mizbeach. Lishkas HaParva, that was where they tanned, where they salted the skins of the karbanos to make them into leather or to begin the leather making process. On the roof of the Lishkas HaParva, there was a mikvah. There was a spring that flowed onto there, and that was a mikvah on there. It was a mayan actually, and that was where the Kohen Gadol would do his tevilah on Yom Kippur. Now the third of these 3 lishkas in the south was called Lishkas HaMedichin. That was where they washed the innards of the karbanos, and there was a circular stairway in the Lishkas HaMedichin, and that went up to the roof. And that's how they got to the roof of the Beis HaParva, where the mikvah was. These were the 3 in the south. Now the 3 in the north, the Gemara says, are called the Lishkas HaEitz, Lishkas HaGola, and Lishkas HaGazis. The Gemara will now explain what they are. Lishkas HaEitz, or Belezer ben Yaakov said, I don't remember what it's for. Abba Shal said that was the Lishka of the Kohen Gadol, and that was behind the other 2. The other 2 were in front of it, and they all had roofs on the same level. Now, what were the other 2 for? Lishkas HaGola was where there was a well of water there that was created by the people who came back from the Golus. That's what was called Lishkas HaGola. And there was a wheel with pails in it which served to pump the water out of it. And that was how they supplied water for the entire Azara. Now, Lishkas HaGazis was called the chamber of hewn stone. It had walls of special stone. That was where the Sanhedrin used to sit, and they would judge the Kohanim. If there was any question about whether a Kohen was fit or not fit, they would come before the Sanhedrin and the Lishkas HaGazis, which was partially in the Azara and partially out of the Azara. Half of it was in the Malkam Kodesh and half of it was out. And somebody who was judged to be fit would put on white clothing and he would go out joyfully into the Azara. And somebody who was fit to be who was judged to be unfit would put on black clothing and he would go out in mourning out of the Azara. Now, this Mishnah has described to us where the Lishkas Kohen Gadol was in the north. As we said, that was the Lishkas HaEitz. Now the Gemara brings a Mishnah that describes the Lishka of the Kohen Gadol that was in the south. And this Mishnah is describing the gates of the Beis HaMikdash. And it says there were 3 gates in the north of the Azara, 3 in the south, and 1 in the east. The Gemara begins describing them. And the Gemara says that the ones on the south, beginning from east to west, were called Shar Hadlaka, Shar HaKarbon, and Shar HaMayim. Rashi says he doesn't know what Shar Hadlaka and Shar HaKarbon, how they got those names, but Shar HaMayim is where they brought the water for the special Nisach HaMayim, the pouring of the water on the Mizbeach on Sukkot. Now, the one at the east was called Shar Nicanor, the famous story of Nicanor who brought the doors And the Gemara says that there were two lishkais, two offices, two rooms flanking Shar Nicanor, one on its left and one on its right. One was called the Lishkas Pinchas HaMalbush. That was where the clothing of the Kahanim were stored and kept, and Pinchas was in charge of them. And the other one was called Lishkas Oisi Chavitin, where they made the Chavitin for the carbon Minchas Chavitin. Now, in the northern side of the Azara, you also had three gates. It was Shar Nitzutz, and the Gemara describes that was a building that was in a chsadra. It didn't have walls, and there was on the roof on top of it was a platform where Kohanim would watch and Leviim would watch below, and that was a place for the watchmen. Now the second of the gates was within this gate was the chel. The chel was a raised area that was within the gates. The second of the gates was called Shar HaKarbon, and the third was called Shar Beis HaMoiked. That was the gate that went into the Beis HaMoiked where the Kohanim used to sleep. Now, this hasn't shown us anything yet about where the Kohen Hagadol's second Lishka was, but the Gemara now says, by quoting the Brisa that goes together with this, where we see that there was another one. And it says as follows: the Brisa says that the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur would do 5 tevilos. He would need to go to the mikveh 5 times, and he have to wash his hands and feet 10 times. Kiddush Yadayim Reglayim 10 times. All of these had to be done in Kodesh, in a place which is holy. That's the Azara. And where would that done? That was on the roof of the base parva, like we said. Except for one. There was one tefillah that was not done in a Makom Kadosh. That was done on top of the Shar Hamayim, like we described the Shar Hamayim before. So on top of that, there was another place for him to go to the mikvah, and that was outside of the Hazara. And the reason for that is that the Torah, when it's describing the Yom Kippur Avodah, says he should do tefillah b'makom kadosh, in a holy place. That's in the Hazara. But that's only the 5 tefillahs that are in the middle or after the Yom Kippur Avodah. There's one tefillah that every Kohen would do in the beginning of the day. That's not a Yom Kippur tefillah, that's a regular tefillah. That didn't have to be b'makom kadosh, that would be on top of Shar Hamayim. Now, the last 3 words are what we were looking for here, and it says that this Shar Hamayim with its mikvah was bitzad lishkasei haise. It was next to the Kohen Gadol's lishka. So you see that there was a lishka in the south, because this Shar Hamayim is in the south, as we've seen in the Mishnah previously. So Gemara says, okay, we have one in the south, one in the north. Which one is which? Which one is Lishkas Parhedron, where he slept, and which one is Lishkas Beis Haftinas, where he learned how to do the Ketores? So the Gemara says it's logical to say that the one he slept with was the one in the south, and the reason is because he needed to go to the mikvah first thing in the morning, and last thing before he went to sleep every day, he had to go to the mikvah. So it's logical that the mikvah was near the place where he slept. Why would he have to get up, wake up in the morning, and then go across the Beis HaMikdash to go to the mikvah, and then come back to do his avodah? So most logically, the Shar Hamayim, which we know was in the south, and we know that the mikvah that he used in the morning was on Shar Hamayim, so he probably slept near Shar Hamayim, which was in the south, and therefore the Lishkas Parhedron, where he slept, was probably the Lishka that was in the south. Now, the Gemara just explains what was he doing going to the mikvah. So every morning he went to the mikvah outside of the Makom Kadosh that we know. Now, every evening of the 7 days before Yom Kippur, he also needed to go to the mikvah, and that was because the last thing that he did in the day was he had paraduma water sprinkled on him as a precaution, but like Rabbi Akiva said, that paraduma water is matamiyim, he needs to go to the mikvah, and he becomes tahar when the sun sets. So the last thing he did in the day was he went to the mikvah again. So again, the Gemara's point is, it's logical that the place where he slept was in the south, near the Shar Hamayim, where he went to the mikvah. So the Gemara says, why do you think they wanted to make it easy for him? It's very logical that they wanted to make it hard for him, so that the Kohen Gadol, if he's doing it, would be a righteous person who's willing to go through that extra effort. There were many tzaddukim who wanted to bribe them with their way into the job, and we wanted to make it hard for them so that they would give up. And I'll prove it to you, the Gemara says, because why do you think we have to have 2 separate lishkas? He has to go back and forth from one to the other. Why doesn't he just have one lishka, or at least make the 2 of them near each other? Why is one in the north and one in the south? Obviously, we're looking to add stress to the activity so that we'll weed out the bad apples. Okay, the Gemara now refers back to the Mishnah where we had seen that the messengers of the Beis Din tell the Kohen Gadol, they say, Ishi Kohen Gadol, my master, Kohen Gadol, we are messengers of the Beis Din, and you are messengers of us. And then they would make him swear and say that he's going to do the avoda properly. So the Gemara says this sounds like it's a kasha on Rav Huna by Rav Yeshua, who used to say that Kohanim are messengers of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Because here they didn't say they're messengers of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, they said you're messengers of us. You're coming to do the avoda for us. So the Gemara says, no. When they said that it's for us, they didn't mean to say that you're doing the avoda for us. You're doing the karbanos for us. The Kohanim are doing the avoda as messengers of the Kadosh Baruch Hu, not as messengers of Klal Yisrael. What they meant here was to say when they're making him swear, and they're saying that you have to swear that you're going to do it right, we're not making you swear what you think you want to swear. We want you to swear to what we're thinking. You're messengers of us and swear to what we have in mind. That way he couldn't have some game and say, I swear, and really he's swearing to something else that he's thinking he's swearing. They're saying you're swearing to what we have in mind, and if he's not afraid of swearing falsely, not a problem, but he may very well not want to swear falsely, and he knows that he can't play a shtick now because he's swearing to what they had in mind. Okay, next, the Mishnah had said that after this step they would each turn away and cry. The Gemara says that what was the crying about? The Kohen Gadol cried because he was suspected of being a tzeduki, and the Chachamim, the messengers of the Beis Din, would have to cry because they had to suspect him of being a tzeduki, like Rav Shubin Levi says, anybody who suspects a person who is not guilty, will end up suffering in his body because of that, and therefore was cause for crying. Now, what was the reason for all these precautions to make sure it wasn't a tzeduki? The Gemara says because the tzedukim had their own ideas about how the avodah of the Yom Kippur should be carried out. When Ketores was brought in the Kodesh Kedoshim, their theory was you have to put the Ketores on the shovel of coals outside of the Kodesh Kedoshim, make a cloud of incense smoke there, and then bring the cloud with you into the Kodesh Kedoshim. That's wrong. You were supposed to do it in the Kodesh Kedoshim. They thought that's what you're supposed to do because of the way they read the Psukim. It said, Aaron can't come into the Kohen, into the Kodesh Kedoshim past the Paroches. El Pnei HaKabaros Asher Al Aaron V'lo Yomos Ki Be'anon Eira El HaKabaros. Only Ki Be'anon, only with a cloud. He has to bring a cloud with him when he comes in. Now that's not the pshat. Ki Be'anon is that he should make the cloud of Ketores inside, and that's where Hashem will Kaviyachol appear. But the Tzedukim read it differently and they did it wrong. We wanted to make sure that they did not do it wrong. We wanted to make sure that this was not a Tzeduki, and that's why all these precautions were taken. The Gemara quotes a Brisa with the story of a Tzeduki who did that. There was one Tzeduki who got into the job, he slipped through the cracks, he was a Kohen Gadol, and he did the avoda in his own way, in his own wrong way. He put the ketores on the coals outside, and he brought it in that way. And then when he left the Kodesh Kedoshim, he made it out alive. When he left, his father said to him, he said, what are you doing? What are you so happy about? We don't hold like the Prushim, we don't hold like the Talmidei Chachamim, but we're still afraid of them. You shouldn't rejoice, and you shouldn't be able to just do what you want. So he said, what do you mean? All my days I saw the Pasaki Ba'anon Era Ala Kaparis, and I thought, when am I going to get a chance to actually do the Avoda and bring the cloud in with me the way us Tzedukim say you're supposed to do it. Now I finally got the chance to do it, so I'm super happy. So Gemara says his end was not long in coming. Two versions of what happened to him. Either he died within a few days, and he was thrown into a trash heap, and worms came out of his nose, because the nose is the first thing to enter the Kodesh HaKadoshim. When a person walks, the nose precedes the rest of the body. And some say that he was struck immediately on the way out of the Kodesh HaKadoshim. He was struck right there on the spot, and that's where he died. The Gemara says there was a sound heard in the Azar when the Malach came and struck him on his face. And the other Kohanim came in to see what happened, and they found that there was a leg of a calf between his shoulders, in a fulfillment of the pasuk that says, "Ragleim regel yeshara, v'kaf ragleim kikaf regel egel," that the palm of their foot will be like the palm of the foot of a calf. That's what happened to him. Okay, we go further analyzing the Mishnah. The Mishnah had said that Zechariah ben Kavutol said that he was the one who read the parsha for the Kohen Hagadol on Yom Kippur night in order to keep him awake. So the Gemara says that this Mishnah was being taught by Rav Hanan bar Rava to Chia, the son of Rav, and Rav was around. So when he taught it to him, he said Zechariah ben Kefutol with a fei, and Rav made a motion to him, and he said no, it's Kavutol. With his hand, he he made a sign that it's a beis, not a fei. So the Gemara says, why didn't he just tell him it's kavuta? Why do you have to make a sign? The Gemara says he was in the middle of saying Shema, in the middle of Kriya Shema. He didn't want to speak. The Gemara says, well, you're not allowed to motion in the middle of Kriya Shema either. Like Rav Yitzchak Bar Shmuel Bar Marta says, somebody who's reading a Kriya Shema is not allowed to make motions or signs, not with his eyes, not with his lips, and not with his fingers. You're not allowed to do any sorts of communication at all. Gemara brings a brayso also. Rav Elazar ben Chesma says somebody who's reading Shema and does make motions with his eyes, lips, or his fingers. About him, the pasuk says, "V'lo oisi karasa Yaakov." You're not calling to me. Verse says, "Not a kash." You're not allowed to make the motions. That's in the first perek of Kriya Shema, where you have to have very strong kavana, where it says "Ala levavecha." The second perek, you're allowed to make motions. Okay, now the Gemara quotes a brayso that has a similar drasha about Kriya Shema. We have the words "V'dibarta bum." You should speak in it. In Kriya Shema, it says these words. You should speak in it. So what does it mean? You should speak in this and not in what else? So the Gemara, the Brisa brings a number of drushes from this. First of all, it says "V'dibarta bum." You should speak when you're saying Kriya Shema. You should say it loud enough for you to be able to hear, but not in Shemona Esrei. Shemona Esrei, you should be whispering. It should be quiet. It shouldn't be a loud voice. It shouldn't be an audible voice. Next, V'dibarta bum, you could talk about this. You could talk about Shema, but you shouldn't be talking about other things. You shouldn't be discussing wasted topics. It should always be Torah which you are busy with. Next shot, the Gemara says, "V'dibarta bum." This should be your kaviyas. This should be what you're busy with all the time. This should be your main occupation. You shouldn't be busy on other things. Says Rava, somebody who speaks useless, wasted words. Not that there's anything wrong with the words that he's saying. It's not negative words, just valueless words. Violates in Isra say, because the Torah says "V'dibarta bum." Talk about this, which implies not something else. Says actually there's a lav in it as well, and he quotes a pasuk in Koheles that says "Kol hadvarim yigeim." All the speech is boring, it is tiring, exhausting. Lo yuchal ish ledaber. Nobody can talk. It says nobody can talk. So don't talk boring things. Don't talk nonsense. Okay, going further, we now get to our next Mishnah. And then the Mishnah says what happened. They had to try to keep the Kohen Gadol awake. So what happened if he started falling asleep? So the young Kohanim, the Perchei Kahuna, would clap their hands. The Gemara calls it Be'etzba Tzreida. The Mishnah calls it Be'etzba Tzreida. The Gemara explains Etzba Tzreida refers to the finger and the thumb. They would spread them, and that's a particular way of clapping that made a loud noise. The Gemara even says the noise was so loud that when Rav Huna did it in the Beis Medrash, it could be heard all around the yeshiva because of the loudness of that noise. Anyways, that clapping sound was in order to try to keep him awake, loud sound to keep him awake. They would say to him, "Ishi Kohen Gadol, my master Kohen Gadol, stand up and walk around in his bare feet on the cold stone floor of the Beis Hamikdash. That'll help keep him awake." And they kept him busy, occupied, walking around the entire night so that he should not sleep until it came time to begin the avoda by doing the shechita. Okay, the Gemara says that Rav Yitzchak says they actually made him stand on tiptoes by firmly planting his toes into the ground. That would keep him awake even more. Now it says they kept him occupied until the time of shechita in the morning. So Gemara says, what do you mean that they kept him occupied? So Gemara says, not by playing music, not with a harp and not with a violin, but by singing. And what songs did they sing? They sang the pasuk in Hashem la yivne bayis. If Hashem doesn't build a house, shav avlu boinav boy, shav amlu boinav boy, then for nothing have its worker has been struggling to build it, because the Beis Hamikdash or any house is only built if it's used properly. So if you're not going to do the avodah the right way, you may get the Beis Hamikdash destroyed. That was the message that was innate in that. It requires a Kadosh Baruch Hu's ratzon for the Beis Hamikdash to continue standing. Gemara says further, the Akirei Yerushalayim, the honorable men of Yerushalayim, did not sleep that night in order to hear the sounds involved in keeping the Kohen Gadol awake, to hear the echoes, or to have the Kohen Gadol hear their echoes of their singing. And again, this is all to keep the Kohen Gadol awake, that he should not fall asleep. Says Abishol, around the rest of the Gvulin, the borders, used to do the same activities. They would stay awake and they would sing and used to do all that, Zeichel HaMikdash, to remember the activities in the Beis HaMikdash. But there was a problem that is caused averas. Men and women were involved in these activities, and they would be intermingling, and it would cause sin and problem. This was a very bad thing, especially on Yom Kippur night. Sigmar says that where are these Gvulin? What do we mean when we say the Gvulin? So Menachem Beitzlik says it's talking about Narda, the city of Narda, all the way off in Bavel. That's the Gvulin. Now the Gemara quotes a conversation on the subject. The Gemara says Eliyahu said to Rav Yehuda, the brother of Rav Salah Hasida, why didn't Mashiach come? Says the reason is because people are doing Averos. On Yom Kippur night itself, they're busy worrying about which women are around and who they could get together with as part of these activities. So he said, what does HaKadosh Baruch Hu say? HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, the Pesach Chatas Roivetz. The sin stays at the door. Look how easy it is to do Averos. And what does the Satan say? Is he very happy about this? So he said, no, the Satan is not involved on Yom Kippur. Satan has no right to criticize or attack Klal Yisrael on Yom Kippur. And the reason you know that is because the word Has-Satan is Gematria 364, which is one less than the number of days in the year. There are 365 days in the year. 364 is one less than that, to show that the Satan has the right to be mastin, to start up with Klal Yisrael 364 out of the 365 days of the year, and the one that he can't is...
Drive the Daf is a project of the Grand Woodlands Shul and is presented by Rabbi Yitzchak Landa. Find us on YouTube or subscribe to daily emails by emailing drivethedaf@gmail.com.